All right, so let's talk about quality assurance, or oftentimes referred to as QA. So QA is a set of skills that folks use to maintain or design a process that can guarantee a desired level of quality. And it has quite a few skills that are somewhat similar to what we do at in software engineering as developers. And so there's quite a few overlap, and so we'll see where they're similar, where they differ. Some of the jargon is similar, some of the jargon is different, and we'll see where it differs and where it's similar. But they usually QA engineers are embedded as part of our team. And they have the same kind of interest in the quality of the application as we do, but they do focus on certain aspects of the development phase, right? Where they focus mostly on making sure that whatever it is that we're building is indeed what is being implemented, what is it that is being asked by the specification. They might use different techniques such as manual testing, and they'll exercise the application by inputting certain inputs and see where it breaks. They'll use their knowledge of the business to understand and identify certain edge cases, things that are certainly very common for folks to input, or things that we know are edge cases that are more rare. They might also, depending on some knowledge on the implementation of the application, they might design their tests in such a way that that exercises are the application in certain ways, based on the fact that they know that it's either a desktop application, standalone desktop application, or whether they know that this is a server-side application that needs to go out to some remote server. So they just like us as software engineers, they're always pushing back on the requirements, questioning the requirements, making sure that is indeed that we have what we agreed to build, or this is the best thing that we should build. They don't take the requirements as a blanket check. Just like us are responsible for questioning requirements, they too have that responsibility. They also are responsible for documenting the process by which things are going to be tested, what techniques are going to be tested, which techniques are going to be used for testing which features, and communicating and inputting defects and bugs and assigning them and maintaining their life cycle, and maintaining the overall process by which they manage the overall quality of the product. Now there's different roles for the QA engineers in different organizations, and it varies from one organization to the next. In some places, the QA engineer is even part of an entirely different organization, and they might be embedded into your project, but might report to somebody entirely different in some other organization. Some QA engineers might be shared amongst projects, right? So you might only have the QA engineer for half their time or a third of their time, and that QA engineer might be lent out to some other folks. So depending on whatever organization you have in your particular industry or company, it varies. Also, the skill level for the QA engineers might be quite different from one organization to the next. Ideally, QA engineers are fairly technical savvy, right? They understand what a database is, what a foreign key is. They might understand what a RESTful service is. They might understand what some of these, but oftentimes it's not the case, right? Oftentimes they only might know about their particular UI, and maybe perhaps they might have the skills to automate some of their tests, but they might be as savvy as understanding the entire process of the software development lifecycle of how code eventually makes it into deployment, right? But nevertheless, it's our responsibility to make sure that they are as well versed as possible, so that we can have constructive discussions on how to best test the application. Ideally, they have some knowledge of the software engineering principles, right? As and they might have this knowledge at varying degrees. They might be fully versed in Agile, or they might even reject the idea of Agile, right? So and you have all sorts of the gamut goes all the way, right? They might also ideally they might have some knowledge of the business, right? So they understand what the requirements. They might have even their own opinions on the requirements, and they might understand how to read a use case analysis, and that which would inform them on how to design their tests and what to test for. They might ideally they might have some knowledge on what the process is of the various environments that we're targeting. The development environment, the QA environment, testing environment, stage, and whatnot. And that takes a while, right, to go all the way through. They might have some knowledge of the software development lifecycle of the continuous integration, maybe some DevOps skills on understanding that different environments might have different databases. They might have different. They might be in a cluster, or they might be and what it takes to deploy these applications. Different skills might inform or drive some of their techniques that they might use for testing. Depending on their technical skills. If they're not programmers, perhaps they might only focus on manual testing, right? Where they might visit different screens and exercise different forms and navigation and whatnot. But if they're more savvy and they're willing to program, and they might even go as far as automating a lot of their tests, right, using tools such as Selenium, programming in Java, and managing their source control. So they might have the same kind of skills that we might have, right, of maintaining these tests on the source control and modifying them as requirements change over time. So ideally they have some of these skills. The business skills might inform them on what is the scope of the application, which that these requirements might change over time, and that they might be either accepting the fact that requirements change over time, and that there is a lot of negotiations going back and forth on what is that's going to be addressed in a particular sprint. That they might participate in meetings where they triage the different defects or the different features that are going to be considered to go in the next couple of sprints. That they participate, their full participations in the planning phase, as identifying what are the upcoming features and how that might affect how they plan the tests that they need to design for testing those different features. That the responsibility is to manage the multiple defects and bugs that they log against the application, and then manage the life cycle of these bugs, right? Assigning them, opening them, closing them, and managing their status as bugs evolve over time. Other skills that might be useful are DevOps tools, for keeping track of builds. Ideally, they might know that we are using tools such as Jenkins, and they could see whether builds have succeeded, that the latest has been deployed to QA, that they can start their QA efforts, right? And they can maintain a knowledge of the current state of the application, that they understand that there's different environments involved in the of moving the code from source code all the way down to production, and then there's savvy to some extent that a lot of these processes are automated, that they run every half hour, that not until you check in any code do the builds kick off. So knowledge of these processes certainly makes it easier, right, for them to be embedded as part of the development team, right? Also that that they're savvy on processes. What are the different meetings that occur over the week for the various decisions on whether to go ahead and deploy the current set of features, and what is the entire process of the release of the end product, and also have their own input on how they can better improve the process and be a better player in the overall process.